everybody, it is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you're watching, it happens to be a Wednesday. Happy New Comic Book Day. So today I am joined with my colleague Kemi, and that only means one thing. Yes, we are going to be talking more Ninja Turtles, and I think this will be a very interesting week, as it'll be a landmark week for us over here on the channel, because this will be from tonight's recording Sunday to the weekend's Friday recording. We're going to be doing our very last celebratory videos of both the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Batman franchise. And I just want to say, Cammie, for the videos that you joined me for, whether it was Ninja Turtle Conversations or Batman Conversations, I definitely am going to say that we can call this little channel celebration a success. And I've had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to tonight's recording.
Me too. I think this was a really good, well-rounded year, and got to talk about two of my favorite things in the realm of comics.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to be continuing from a video that we did previously this year, and that was discussing the phenomenon that has revitalized the Ninja Turtle franchise, along with many other things in the last couple of years. But that, of course, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, which, of course, brought Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird together, along with writer of the 150 comic book series, Tom Waltz, which is really, really great. Glad to see a very successful comic run there after such a long time. And The Last Ronin was no different. So we're going to talk about the follow-up to The Last Ronin, which was a 5-issue miniseries called Last Ronin, The Lost Years, along with a one-shot called the One Day Special. So I would definitely be honest that I was definitely craving more from The Last Ronin after the series had officially ended. But I will definitely say, as any person who has absorbed perfection, it is very skeptical when it comes to something that follows up with something as incredible as The Last Ronin. So yeah, I wasn't really sure about how to feel about this, but of course, you know, expect the worst and hope for the best.
Like you said, you are craving more, so of course the sequel is necessary, but sequels often live up to the original, and a lot of the times they kind of let you down. So it's always interesting to go into something that you really loved, hoping it just doesn't ruin it. I don't think this one did, though.
I will definitely agree with you there, because number one, you get Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz back to do the story, and you get some wonderful artwork by Ben Bishop. And I think reading it the second time around for this video gave me a little bit more of a soft heart towards it. Like, I think I liked it more the second time around than I did the first time around. And I think that might be because of the fact that we're right in the middle of The Last Ronin to the Re-Evolution. And that is a matter of fact why we're talking about the Lost Years right now, because we have hit the midway point on the second follow-up to The Last Ronin. And I will definitely say right now, 3 issues in, I'm enjoying that. But I think that that story is making, at least to me, The Last Ronin, The Lost Years, a much more relevant piece of the Last Ronin legacy.
Yeah, I can see that. This one for me was a lot more apocalyptic feeling, so I was enjoying that element of it. I think the artwork was very gritty. In terms of the first one, I felt like, I don't know, in a way I was kind of still reliving the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles of our youth, and so now I felt like Michelangelo was truly alone in this. You know, I really felt like this was his journey, this was his mission, and now we were with him come hell or high water. We were going to see what this kind of fleshed out to be.
Right. And that's exactly what The Lost Years is all about. It's about how did we get to the start of The Last Ronin and Michelangelo's mission to take down Shredder's grandson. And it basically begins when he has fled the United States because of the death of his family. But at the same time, there's a little extra something that I feel now reading the current story in progress adds a little bit more flavor, because there's actually two stories here. It's the story of Michelangelo's journey from escaping New York to coming back to New York, but we're also seeing this being told by April and her daughter Casey to a now growing bunch of new turtle children, which I think is wonderful, because I am now officially in love with these new four turtles. And this gave me an opportunity to revisit this story, to actually see them grow up while listening to this story. So this is where we basically got to meet Yi, Uno, Moja, and Odin. See, I remembered his name this time.
Well, you know what I love about it is now knowing that each of those names means one. And I think that is such an important element. And for me, that's actually what solidified my love for them, because it took me a minute. I'll be honest, when you grow up with a franchise that becomes virtually part of your existence, to have new introduction of what seems to be like what will be the next generation, it's kind of hard to accept, because A, I'm accepting I'm old, B, I'm accepting change, and C, I'm just accepting there's an inevitable future that isn't what I've known. We're just so used to the reimagination of the four turtles that we love so much. And so for me, kind of in a way, I've been grieving with Michelangelo, the death of his brothers and the death of his father and the world that we knew, and maybe in a way, this is Eastman's and Laird's nod to us as the fans, saying, hey, thanks for being here for as long as you have. However, we're getting old too, and we've got to at some point hand the reins off to someone else. And I think that by working with other content creators, in the sense of new artwork, new layouts, new writing, new storylines, we are inevitably watching what will be the re-evolution of the Turtle franchise, and that's kind of a cool thing.
So we actually are introduced to the four turtles first before we get into Michelangelo's story. I just want to know, what are your overall thoughts about them? Because what I really do appreciate about them is the fact that they definitely are their own characters, especially considering the fact that we actually have an even balance of male and female turtles in this brand new foursome. But I think what's so interesting about them is they sort of are similar to the original four in personality, and yet somewhat not. I think it's like, if I'm to like pinpoint their exact personalities, Odin is the strong one, Moja is the hungry one, Yi is the quiet but silent but genius one, and Uno is without a doubt the tough talking tomboy who really wants to be the leader.
I think you had Moja and Odin flip-flopped.
Are you sure?
Yeah, Odin is the fooder. He's the big guy. He's the big
I really
bear.
thought it was Moja.
No, Moja's the darker, almost like the orangish turtle.
Well, either way.
But I guess for me, I tried to not think about pinning them to the old turtles. I do think that in a way that is, again, a nod to yesteryear. There are certain elements and characteristics of this new bunch that you do see in our older bunch, but I tried really hard to just kind of latch onto them and who they are. What I am happy that I'm starting to see with the current series that we just read, the Lost series, is that they're getting out of the baby talk. They're getting out of the baby mode, and they're starting to become teenagers. And that's where we met our group, And I think that for a minute, it took me a while to identify and connect with them, because I'm like, oh, baby turtles, cute in their little form, but then I guess the toddler phase was difficult for me, because I'm like, the baby talk and all of that. But we're past that now, and like you're saying, we're starting to see the development of who they are and kind of their purpose and their drive and what they want. I think of all the characters, Yi is my least favorite. I just find Yi to be a little bit self-absorbed and a little disrespectful in the commentary, it just like the whatevers and the yads, and I don't know, I don't like that element of Yi. But otherwise, They're fun to watch. They're fun to watch them grow up and kind of come into their own. I think they're at a very curious and excitable time in their own lives. So, we're seeing this kind of development of who they are, who they want to be, who they know legacy wise they stand to be. But they're still young, they're still naive, and they're very observant. And I was very surprised to see how quickly they became these very powerful ninjas. Their training was spot on, and that was I think for me also a very important latching in terms of, okay, these kids have the spunk, they have what it takes to be the next generation. So now I'm starting to get excited about who they are.
Right. And I think that that's also something that you got to get used to, because this story seems to be being told to them at different points in time, because with each issue, you actually see a different snapshot of them growing up. So yes, at the beginning, it's basically them in like, they must be somewhere in like maybe 3 or 4 years old, where
Yeah.
they're talking a little bit, but some of them are talking better than others. Some are just, pushing each other around. But anyway, at one point in time where things get a little bit heated at the house, Granny April tells everybody to get together, and let me tell you a story of Michelangelo. And we see Michelangelo right away just stowing away to try and get to the other side of the world to find solace, sanctuary after all that's happened. And he's hoping that he'll find some kind of comfort in Japan. And while he's on his way, two things already start happening. Number one, he obviously realizes that it doesn't matter how far he gets away from danger, danger is always going to follow him everywhere he goes. And he's introduced to the fact that this area of the world is basically being tortured, if you will, by an organization that is sort of like, I don't really necessarily want to say it's exactly like the Foot Clan, but it's basically this story's version of the Foot Clan. And the leader is a person, and the leader is called Deathworm. The second thing that happens to Mikey is the fact that he starts officially to see the spirits of his brothers, who are constantly bothering him too. And he's trying to figure out, if is he going insane, or is this what he needs to power through his current state of mind.
And I really think that is a nod to being a ninja, to, a true ninja. There is so much spirituality that comes with that training. And I think that him carrying the legacy of his brothers and the memories of who they are, but not so much even who they were, but more so who they are in this moment for him, as he walks his journey, what he feels they would be saying to him, how they would be kind of encouraging him, or even in some cases bagging on him, like, you could have done that better. What were you thinking? They are in the true embodiment of what brothers are. They haven't changed even in the afterlife. And I think that is such an important element of his journey, because in a way they are the push that he needs. He doesn't have the image of his father there. He doesn't have, I mean, granted, he can see him, but he's not the encouraging voice. It's his brothers. And I think that is a testament to the bond that they carried throughout their life together.
Yeah, that's what's very interesting about him in this story, because he only sees the visions of his brothers, but he carries around with him the teachings and the lessons that Master Splinter taught him. And I think it's also really, I mean, not that we never felt for Michelangelo before, but we really feel for him so much, because he's carrying such a burden, because he feels so guilty about how everything took place and how it all took its course, because he felt like he was a coward. I mean, look, I'll throw a little lightheartedness in here. I'll go back to Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, when he and Donnie are trying to disarm the bomb, and Mikey goes, "You're the good at machines, I'm the party dude." Like, he's not the one that takes anything seriously, and yet seriousness in life just hit him right square in the face with a ton of bricks, and he is just feeling powerless. And it's really sad to watch.
Well, I don't think it's sad. I think it's important. And I
Of
think that's
course.
honestly why Eastman chose Michelangelo as the last remaining turtle, because in life, in our journey with the turtles, as we've grown up with them, we have never taken him seriously because he's never taken himself seriously. He has always been the embodiment of the teenage part of the turtles. And he has been the fun one, the goofy one, the kind of the one that just goofs off. He doesn't take life seriously, and that's why we loved him. But in this element, in this moment, in the loss of everyone and everything that's ever meant something to him, he is showing us his true strength. He is showing us his true power. And he is showing us the love that he carried for not only his brothers, his father, but his friends. They were everything to him. And I think there is a really strong rooted line in this storyline about family and the importance of family and what family means to each of these. Even as April is telling some of the versions of her story, you feel that, with the loss of her mom and then the loss of Casey, she had her daughter, yes, but inevitably she continues to refer time and time again in multiple issues about the turtles being her family. And then the fact that she's now taken on these 4 babies and they're her grandbabies, and it's just, it's so powerful to watch. So for me as a turtle fan and continuous through life, I will always be a turtle fan. I just think it's so important to give Mikey this empowerment in the end. And I think we were all kind of rooting for him. We wanted him to succeed. We wanted this journey to be a success.
Even though
And
we knew
so
it was.
right, but to see him not only taking ownership of the importance of the journey, but also to self-identify the importance of all he's come to overcome, all the things that he has kind of set aside, the ego, he several times kind of admitted he just wanted to die in that moment. We've saw a couple of incidents where he's like, just take me, let me die now. But he's overcome that. And I just, that carries to the point of strength so heavily. So it's been very encouraging to watch Mikey in this journey, because this is a side of him I think we all knew as a turtle he had, but to actually see it evolve is a magical thing.
Right. And so the pursuit of Deathworm, or possibly not at certain points, takes Mikey to places where you never would have expected him to actually go on this journey. He goes to a lot of places. And one of the few things that I really love is how the artwork really depicts the places, like especially in issue 2 when he's like in the cities of South Korea and stuff like that. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous with all the bright colored lights. It's like something out of Blade Runner or Ghost in the Shell or something like that. And at the same time, you also do get a couple of those panels where you do get that wonderful Kevin Eastman art, which makes me always so happy to know that Kevin Eastman is doing more than just writing the story. Like, he wants you to know, yes, I am here. This is my legacy. I am part of this. I'm going to give you some of my artwork as well. So I really do appreciate the fact that he does that too.
I appreciate that I found a Stephen King book on the bookshelf. That for me was everything. There's a point where he's doing the journaling and there's a Stephen King book. I was like, oh my God. And actually there's more than one Stephen King book, which I really attest that to Eastman. But yeah, there's nothing that is greater than the artwork of Eastman. But I think that so much of this writing is Eastman. And I think that, again, I feel it's just such a strong connection as a fan to this story, because there's so much of a nod to the past, but not so much that we are retelling the past, but the legacy of the roots that have been planted for the last 40 years are there. And if you've been with the Turtle franchise for as long as, you may have been, like myself and you, I think that it gives you a greater appreciation for the future that they're creating in front of our eyes.
Right. And so then when it finally reaches a place that is willing to take him in, we meet Master Yip, who is definitely a breath of fresh air in the entire story. I love him. I don't know about you, but I got massive Mr. Miyagi vibes because of his sense of humor. I loved it. I absolutely loved this character. And I believe that was when Mikey was in China, I believe, or did he actually make it to Japan? I forgot about that.
That's a good. I want to say you're right on China, but a little foggy, so I won't say yes, no, or otherwise. But yeah, he was definitely a favorite character of mine as well.
Yeah, because he basically was a stern teacher, but he was someone who definitely understood the troubles that Mikey was going through. And the best part was Mikey really found not just comfort, but he also used this place as a way to get his strength back. He did things around the village. He made friends with a little girl there, which was really, really sweet. How she was also trying to learn English and he helped her out a little bit. But then, this is also at the time where, the death worm is not necessarily one of his main priorities here. Like, he knows that these guys are trouble and he knows that he should do the right thing, just like he used to do with his brothers. But he doesn't feel that it's the time or the place, and yet eventually the trouble is going to find him. And we are left at the end of the midpoint of this story with a very, very dark ending. And that's basically when Mikey sees this whole village just absolutely slaughtered by the death worm. And he's like, all right, that's it. Gloves are off. I'm coming for you. And that's
Well,
what I feel. Yeah.
I think the most important element of issue 3 is the loss of sight and his ability to
Yes.
overcome that and connect in a way, which again I take I nod to Eastman in this regard because he is such a stickler for history and bringing in historical elements to the Turtle franchise and using true warrior tactics, the lingo, the art form, the training, all of that. He put such effort into making sure that these stories are told in such a genuine way. And so for Mikey to have lost his sight, that's a completely different type of core strength because you have to then rely on your other senses. And as he's embarking on at this point, which is such a pivotal part of the journey, for him to kind of woosah for a minute and be able to get all of that valuable information from the sensei and kind of just be calm in that moment and just learn to adapt and overcome to now his new situation, I just thought was such a pivotal moment in the story. And then for him to come through that, to see the village and now know, okay, now I have a different, darker take. That's kind of where I took a turn in the story, though, because though the full story felt very apocalyptic and it does have a very dark ambiance, I don't feel that revenge was the way to go. I know that was certainly his drive from the beginning, but I just felt in that moment Mikey wasn't truly listening to his brothers because it was never about revenge. But I think we get there in the end, and of course, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I just that was hard for me because I'm like, Mikey, that was never Master Splinter's drive. He was never about revenge.
Right, right. So we take a break in this action and we're given the Lost Day special issue. And the Last Ronin is taking a bit of a break right here. We don't get really anything in Mikey's story, but we get, I would probably say there were points where it did lag a little bit, but the main focus of this specific story was on April, Casey, and the Young Turtles, because this book focuses on the four turtles' very first trip up to the surface, up above the sewers. And they finally see what the world above is like, and they meet certain people on the way as they help Granny April run her errands. And I think what is really interesting about the Lost Day special is the fact that you think about the Turtles and the original stories and how they could never be seen because if anyone saw them, they would be a menace. People would be afraid of them. They would probably be looked at as something to be taken to a lab, get tested on, whatever. But either way, they were never allowed to walk around the streets in broad daylight. These young turtles, every person that they meet, they're welcomed. They know April. They know they go, these must be your kids. And they're actually shown things. They're actually spoken to. They're treated like equals. And that is such a different thing to see at a completely different time. And the fact that this is something that happens to Moja, Odin, Yi, and Uno really will set the stage for their next step in their journey, which is a willingness to come back to the surface and fight the good fight for the right people.
Well, Moja does allude to having gone to the surface before. They don't really get deep into it in that issue, but because April just kind of dismisses, like, I don't need to know, that's not what this is about right now. But I think to kind of seal the whole issue for me, I just thought it was very sweet. I thought the whole story was just very sweet. Like you said, it did lag a little bit. It was a little challenging to kind of read through some parts of it. But there was some really fun characters that we got to be introduced to, and just, small little elements of it. But I think once again, we get a basis of family in this issue, and we kind of just get a breather. I feel like that's how I called it an episode too. I feel like that's how this issue was. It was, we're gritty and we're fighting and we're doing all these things with Michelangelo, but here we just kind of get a breather. We get to step back and we get to enjoy April and Casey Marie for a moment, and we get to kind of get a little bit more insight on these, little turtles, baby turtles, as they've been referenced, and then get to kind of see.
They gotta be. I think at this point in time they're like 10 or 11 years old.
I think they're 12 because when they're at the commander's party, they Odin alludes to almost being 13. So because he's gonna get into the punch,
Yeah, so they're in their tweens.
They're definitely tweens. But I kind of enjoyed that backside because we also get to see, I think, some moments in April's life that we didn't necessarily get to see in the first run.
Yes.
Where she had those kind of darker underground moments and everything. So I very much enjoyed this issue. I have a hard time watching April age though, because inevitably it ages me. Because I had to think back. I'm like, okay, would April really be in her 60s? But she would, because I mean, if you think back to our childhood, we're in our 40s. She was about 20, when she was a journalist. So watching her age has been difficult, but I think this issue, once again, it really did help to solidify that for me and made me more comfortable with her age and her purpose in this story. I felt like this was necessary, and it was a good comfort break.
So then when we get back to the reality, we get to issue number 4 of The Lost Years. Mikey's travels and his hunt for the Death Worm have taken him to the underground fighting rings of Europe, which I would probably say was the weirdest direction the story would take. And it's so funny how this exact same theme just took place in the brand new Jason Aaron TMNT run in issue number 4 with Donatello. And I'm like, what is it with the Ninja Turtles and cage fighting? Like, what is this?
I think it's just, you think of modern day fighting, and we don't really see boxing that much anymore, but there's MMA everywhere. So I think the idea of alluding to cage fighting and then this mutant versus human kind of thing. But I'll agree with you. When we got to issue 4, to me, it felt very rushed. It felt like a really strange issue altogether. I did enjoy the dynamic of the relationship, of the friendship, but unfortunately it was short-lived. It was really cool to watch him kind of step aside and kind of put honor first and family first. Again, family for me, I think, is the root of this entire series. But I was just really saddened because in a way I kind of thought that maybe Michelangelo was going to call a truce and he wasn't going to take his life in the duel, and then they were both going to have their freedom, and then that didn't happen. It was a lot really quick, and it was dark and it was gritty, and it was like, whoa, now it's over and now we're on to issue 5, so it was a strange issue.
Yep. And basically what happens at the end of issue 4, he finally gets these guys to talk, and they finally tell him where to find Deathworm. And I believe it's his travels go back to the Far East, back to Mongolia, where he originally heard that Deathworm was from. And then we get to issue 5, where we have a couple of things take place. So, of course, the first thing that takes place is the final showdown between Mikey and Deathworm. And the craziest part is who Deathworm really is, because, again, it's a very cliche thing. You get that big hulking guy and you think that this is the threat. And they're like, oh no, he was just the number one. Here is the real Deathworm, this guy that looks like the martial arts master that Uma Thurman trained with in Kill Bill Volume 2. And then I'm just like saying to myself, oh God, could it have gone in any other way? Absolutely not. This is exactly what you would expect it to be.
But much like issue 4, I felt like issue 5 was very rushed and underwhelming. It wasn't exactly how I saw the sequence ending. And I don't know, I felt kind of like, okay, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't good, bad, or indifferent, but it was to have all that build up to this character and then to have him killed off as quickly as Michelangelo took care of business. It didn't pave the way for this huge story arc that built up to this moment.
Because what it really does build up to is you basically see that Mikey has come such a long way from where he was at the beginning of this journey. And we see how powerful he has become, which is why it now makes so much more sense. Because at the end of that, what does he do? He gets on his way back to New York and basically tells the grandson of Shredder, you're next. And based on what the Last Ronin comic book was, the original 5 issues, you saw how Mikey was in that book, so you wouldn't expect anything less. So the truth of the matter is, yes, if he really was that strong in the original Last Ronin comic, you would expect Deathworm to take a beating like that to a certain degree.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I expected something a little bit more, but I mean, it could have been worse.
Yeah, that is true. And then, of course, the final scenes in the story is April and Casey Marie basically telling the Turtles, you're ready. You guys have come a long way. You're just like your Uncle Mikey. You started off at a certain place and you ended in this time. And then you see that beautiful picture of them in the end of the story, like all of them. And the part that makes me so happy is the fact that each and every one of them is holding one of the 4 weapons of each of the Turtles. I think that that is such a nice homage. It's like, this is the re-evolution. They've mastered all of what they've originally done. We're heading into a new age right now.
Yeah, that given with what Mikey said about he's been at this for 15 years, we definitely know that they're in their teenage years now. And that last image of those 4 new turtles was everything for me. I mean, I got excited when I saw that picture. I was like, oh, we're in it now. Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, so, and just like the end of The Last Ronin, when you see Casey Marie talking to the fishbowl with the 4 little turtles in it, it's like, I personally was excited. I was curious to see where it was going to go. And now we've seen the end of this story. And I'm like, is there more coming? Well, guess what? More arrived. And we're in the middle of the next chapter as we speak. So I would probably say, in summation, yes, I did enjoy this one much more the second time around. But I definitely will say that it does not hold a candle to the original. And I will definitely say that the current story is much better than this one too. But what I really think that this is for is it's really for the completionist fan to really get the whole story. And I think it's important to have this whole story.
Well, it is, especially if you plan on kind of carrying out a series in such a way where we get different story arcs. To see those elements, to see the behind the scenes, like I said, for me, the Lost Day special was very important because I got to see an element of the April Casey story, that I hadn't seen before. And I feel like pieces filled in from the first story arc. So I think that as a completionist myself and as one who intends to start to finish a complete series, I think that even though this wasn't as strong for me, like you're saying, as the first story arc, I think it was important as a reader of the series. And we got a lot of really interesting elements. There were some great highs and some kind of disappointing lows, but I think overall it's worth the read. And if you are, planted in this, it's definitely worth your time.
I 100% agree with you there, Cami. I really do. And I think that that's gonna wrap this episode up, everybody. Cami and I will be doing some more Last Ronin discussions soon. It's all just a matter of when the Last Ronin 2 officially concludes. And when that happens, we will bring you guys a review. And what we, of course, are hoping for is that there is more if there is a need for more at the end of the next chapter. But I am also just hoping that they just don't milk this to death, because now that there's a live action movie in the works, you know, knowing that it's going to be rated R makes me very excited. But I'm just like, you really got to stick to the source material. That's basically what it is. But since Kevin Eastman is going to really be one of the producers that focuses on making this project as best as it possibly can be, I don't think the movie is going to destroy this franchise. I really do not believe it.
No, I think it'll only add to it. And I think if anything, if the 90s taught us nothing, they will be very much a part of their movie projects, because they don't want to disappoint the fans.
Yeah, I think it would be funny if we actually decided at the end of the day if we wanted to do a Who's Wore It Best episode after that movie comes out. It would be a fun way to it would be really fun to get reacquainted with the comic that around that time as well. Because I would have a feeling that at this point in time, I probably would have not read it for quite some time.
Well, I'm glad we read it this go around, and I'm looking forward to discussing more Ronin in the future.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're up with all of our latest content. Thank you very much. Even though this Ninja Turtles celebration was not as dominant in terms of content as opposed to the Batman, I will definitely say the best part about these Ninja Turtle videos that we've recorded is we put so much into each of them. It's as if we made like a dozen videos. I mean, if you guys haven't checked out our Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird Creators Notes video, Cami and I had such an amazing discussion talking about these two guys as well as the legacy that they created. And yes, we really did go over everything. And by that, I also mean the next mutation.
True fans, we are true fans.
True fans. All right, everybody, take care, and we will see you in the next one.